All right, sorry guys, I'm running just a few minutes behind, but I'll give you another couple minutes and we'll get you guys rolling here. Let's turn my audio on first. Now I can talk. So I'm gonna go ahead and get sharing. We'll get this thing rolling here. And make sure everybody's coming in. All right. So the topic that I wanted to talk on, it's gonna be two different, not necessarily strategies, but it's gonna allow you to think of calories in a little bit different perspective, and it's going to reinforce a lot of the concepts we talk about. And then I'll touch base on ranges and things of that nature. But when we really think about nutrition, and specifically when we're in that fat loss journey, there's some small things that go a long way. And if you can consistently put them into play, it's going to move the needle for you, and it will help compound the results. And when we think about that, we think about like, okay, high volume, and then again, it's going to go back to a protein-based meal that it's going to allow you to stay satisfied for a longer period of time. So there's ways that you can implement these strategies and techniques to help uh, make sure you're getting a nutritious based, obviously, meal, but also one that's going to allow you to manage your hunger response. Because if if we allow that hunger to kind of control us or get a little bit out of control, what I'm saying there is extended period of time. Uh, Sometimes what we see is overconsumption with the calorie ratio, which I'll discuss a little bit. And then when I'm talking about high volume, we're really just talking about the density of the food and the quality of the food and the types. So I will address that for you guys. And then I'll talk a little bit about some of the problems that we see and the reasoning why, from a nutrition standpoint, that some diets may fail you or certain diets or things that you may have done in the past may stop working. Sometimes what we see is tiny portions never address the hunger component. Now, again, I'm always going to say, hey, you probably should have some type of hunger response. It's a matter of controlling that. Now, we don't want to have a starvation response like you're ravenous. So we see that when a person is consuming really small amounts, and if they're not paying attention to the types of food. All right. And I'll touch on that a little bit. So if they're skipping the protein component, that's going to be the blood sugar response or the stabilization of the insulin hormone. And if you can stabilize your insulin response, it's going to help you quite a bit, uh, not only with your energy, but when we think about fat oxidation, the insulin response can be part of that as well. So we also see it with high liquid calories, where some of these calories are snuck in, and or if we're not more aware, of what we're consuming, it can be compounded and add up fairly quickly. The creamers, the sauces, the oils. Again, we have to take a little bit of time to educate ourselves and evaluate and make sure what we're doing and is going to be in line with what outcome we desire. So the hidden liquids can add up fast. And another thing we see is a person may be eating healthy, which is fine. That could be a broad definition for you. What does healthy mean? Obviously, you could put your own definition in there. Uh, energy, yada yada yada, how you feel, quality food, stuff like that. But a person may be eating good and good quality food, but they may be still over consuming. So we got to watch that component. That happens quite often. And or I've worked with individuals over the years where, um, and this is a market employee, and unfortunately, sometimes we look at one component of marketing and stick to it. I worked with in our brick and mortar a female client years ago, and she was like, "Well, it's organic." That's fine, it's fine if it's organic, but what is it? Is it a protein base? Is it, you know, um, how they labeled organic and healthy? See, that's are the right calorie range or what you need. Um, so some of the marketing components really confuse the consumer, and we got to understand that. And then the other thing, you can't burn fat if you're always hungry. So you got to tamp down that hunger response. That means you're getting the energy and fuel in the right format to keep you burning at a high level. That's why we talk about the ratios of protein, carbs, and fats, because it truly is when you get some of these dialed in, it's going to help uh, with your energy response as well. So the solution is going to be eat more food, the right kind. So it's the right combination. Again, we're always going to go after some type of protein source. So a higher protein, it's going to give you, again, the sensation of being fuller longer and all the benefits that come with a higher protein. And then a higher volume. When you think about higher volume, you want to look at it from a standpoint of, okay, what's the quality? What is it made of? Okay. Is it higher in fiber? Because that's another thing, a cue you want to go after. And if that volume is high, well, it's going to give you the satisfaction of being full a little bit longer if the density and the quality is there. So, and it may not be sexy though, so broccoli would be a perfect example of a high volume with a protein, right? A good amount of broccoli. The reason I say that it's nutrient dense, takes longer to break down, fibrous, and it's a carbohydrate. So you get all those components. So when you think about when you're building your meal, you want to think about obviously the protein, what type, that just depends on the person. There is a ratio of proteins that are going to give you higher quality proteins in comparison to calories, calorie breakdown. I think I shared that way back in a one of our educational videos way back. But anyway, if you need access to a protein ratio, I have that somewhere. I can share that over. And then again, the higher volume is going to be satisfied longer. So lower calorie density, bigger place for fewer calories. So we see this sometimes where the density of the food and the quality of the food doesn't match the calories that you think you're getting and or not getting. That's really understanding of what types of food you're eating, how it's made. Again, if we go out to eat, typically we're going to sacrifice one of these components unless we make specific decisions with picking the meal and or some of the higher end restaurants who focus on quality of food, sourcing and things of that nature. You can make better decisions. And these are just ranges that I put together as far as what we see. Now, this may be outside of your specific range, which is okay. I'm just giving you some numbers, and I'm going to give you some examples of what to go after. So, women anywhere from 12 to 15. Again, this is just an example. Men, again, example 2,000 to 2,600. Um, those are just average ranges because I'm going to give you a breakdown to make this make a little bit more sense. So And these are targets good as well. The protein rule, what we try to push women up to first, we try to get them above 100 grams, and then we may manipulate it from there, depending on how they're responding to the calories they're consuming and the ratio of protein. So that's always we typically have to build that up. Some people come to us and are already fairly good at getting above the 100 grams, but if they're not, we have to slowly build that up because that's it takes some time to get used to because of the density. When we go back to increasing protein, it's more dense. The digestive process may take a little bit longer. The person may have some response to that that we have to adjust to fit in the window of calories that they personally need. And again, men anywhere from 160 plus. Most of my guys are hitting around that, 160. Some of them go a little bit higher, and I try to push them depending on what their goals are. So that again, these are just starting ratios, and then we go a little bit more specific based upon goals and caloric metabolic process. And then we go back to what is protein? Protein's a metabolism booster, muscle protector, craving killer. So it does all three, and that's why you hear us talk about that all so often. And these are just examples. This is again, we set this up more specific, and we can set this up more specific, macro driven within the app, and we can manipulate these workout days, non-workout days too. With this new technology we're bringing on, it allows us to make a little bit more modifications. So if we look at it, say, a woman's intake is anywhere from 12 to 1,500 calories, we're looking at 30 to 40%, typically 40% protein based. We'll start anywhere from 30 to 40 carbs, again, 30 fat. You can see a ratio breakdown there. What typically happens, and we get this question quite often, is as we push that protein ratio up, the fat ratio follows, which it will typically. And I know sometimes I get this question from some of my guys is that, hey, my fat is over my mark. And you may have heard me say this before. I'm not necessarily concerned about that marker point. If our fat content is higher, we're probably going to be okay as long as our protein's higher, and then our carb we can manipulate that number down to stay within our calorie range. I would rather have you pull back your carb and then worry about your fat uh, when you're in a fat loss journey. Now, I will say this: if you're feeling a little bit lethargic, what you may want to do is manipulate your carbs up on the workout days a little bit, and that's pretty simple to do. But again, that's individual stuff. And then the men's breakdown is anywhere 2,000, again, similar ratio, 40%, 40, 30, 30, somewhere in that range, 35, 40. You can manipulate those up and down just a little bit to make it make sense to the 100%. But we like to push that protein up a little bit higher because that's going to get the foundation moving. It stabilizes a lot of things. So, and then there's also a hormonal balance too, and being the sensation of being full and satisfied. You can manipulate your fats to kind of help tamp down those cravings as well. And these are examples of high when I was talking about volume or density foods that are going to be more bang for your buck, these are just some swaps to think about, instead of granola Greek yogurt with berries. I know I see a lot of people, even some of my guys, like to have the granola with the Greek yogurt. And if it allows them to have that within the window of what they need, that's fine. But I've seen a lot of times where that granola really pushes their carb intake pretty high, their sugar intake pretty high, and by the end of the day, they can't make their mark. So if that was the case, viewing it from a coach's standpoint, I would say, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to pull that first carb intake back a little bit. We'll still get the carbs from the berries or fruit. We'll pull a significant amount of ratio of carbs out of your first meal, and that's just an example. Again, instead of chips, which can be high calorie, processed component, depending on what you buy, they can have a lot of chemicals applied to them to make you want to eat them all. Uh, It would be like rice cakes or turkey slices. Again, I'm giving you examples of flipping out uh, the volume or density. Instead of the pasta, there's different ways to make zucchini noodles, lentil pasta. They have a lot of different options out there now that they make that are going to be a little bit more, uh, I would say, dense and pushing your macros in a better direction. Another small example, instead of, some type of salad dressing, a Greek yogurt ranch. That's a thing you can do or make or manipulate yourself where you have a little bit more control over it. Instead of a smoothie bowl, uh, go to a protein shake plus a fruit. So again, these are just small examples. The list can go on and on where you can look at, the fibrous content in comparison. I'm just trying to give you guys, the big picture and then the strategies behind some of it. And another thing that we see, this is specifically when you're in the thick journey of the fat loss phase, making sure your calorie ratio is within the marker point to stay under consumption, right under the marker point. So being in some type of deficit. Uh, if you look at this example, it's going to give you, hey, if we can stay within these 300 to the 400 calorie range for each meal, that's going to get you where you need to be. So just depending on where your total caloric intake should be, making sure that some of our meals just don't push us out of that ratio. And that could happen really easy based upon the type of food, whether it's whether it's dense or not. So when I'm talking about more nutritional dense foods that are going to give you more bang for your buck in comparison. So here's an example. If we're going to stay in that 350 to 400 calorie range obviously we'd have to measure these out to make sure that they hit these marker points uh, in that 350 calories. Eggs, oats, berries. So that would be example. It's well balanced. You're going to get a combination of fruit, carbohydrate, and some fat within there. So same concept here is for lunch, chicken, rice, and veggies. Now, I would say if you were struggling with pushing your calories too high and need to stay under a marker point, I would pull the rice and double the veggie because you're going to get more bang for your buck from the veggie with the fibrous content. So you can have just the same amount of food, or almost more, but it's going to give you a better end result. So it's going to allow you to get that fiber up. It's going to allow you to uh, take a little bit longer and give you a sensation of being full for a longer period of time. Again, these are just small things that you can tweak. Not saying the rice is necessarily bad. If it's going to push you outside the ratio, there's small things you can do to stay within the boundaries. And dinner, same concept. I would say the same concept for this one, that 450 to 500. The reason that's a little bit higher is same. It's probably going to be a little bit higher in the calorie component, specifically the fat, but it's a good fat. So then we go potatoes, asparagus. Again, if you felt like the potatoes are going to push you over in that calorie component, you pull them and add a little bit of asparagus. And again, it would be um, a win-win because of the fibrous content, and you're still getting the nutrition, the density of the nutrition, the extended period of time of feeling satisfied without the hunger response kicking in and keeping your calories lower or within the range you need. So again, these are just examples, and a lot of times, personally, this is what we do. Like for breakfast, I do have a piece of toast. It's typically post-workout. So I I don't work out 100% fasting, but I'll take a essential amino acid, so it has some calories in it. And then I have my first meal after my workout, and taking in a carbohydrate then is not a bad thing because it's a refeed component. But let's say for lunch and dinner, I would probably not have the rice. I would just do the veggie, and then the same thing for dinner. I would most likely pull the potato or have very little, unless I was under calorie, and I would be okay with asparagus. I'm just giving you examples in real life scenarios of what we do. Again, the macro range for protein per meal would have put you in that 35 to 45 grams. Again, I would obviously have to give you specific amounts of eggs. I'm just giving you kind of an overview. And these are small steps or strategies, I would say, to try to continue to push your protein intake. Because so many people we work with struggle to hit those marker points or get close enough. These are just some small things you can do. And I used to do this quite often, add protein powder to oatmeal, raw oats, and I would use a little bit of maybe a small amount of milk and or water, just depends on what I had available, and make my first meal that because it was a carbohydrate protein combination. Another thing see people do, I personally don't do it, but some people do is add protein powder to their coffee as well. Again, you got to figure out what makes sense to you. So I don't necessarily feel like I have to do that, and I'm a kind of a coffee snob, so it wouldn't it wouldn't be conducive for me. But we're just trying to figure out different ways to make it a win-win. Uh, Obviously, Greek yogurt over regular. Again, that's going to push your protein. It's going to push your fat a little bit too, but that's again, we're not necessarily worried about that component. Um, you can use the lean ground turkeys or 96% lean beef to pull the calorie ratio and still get the protein in. So again, these are just different strategies you can implement to help your ratio and making sure your calories are not pushing too high. Again, snacks, if you can keep it high protein or higher protein, like a jerky, egg whites or deli turkey, something that's going to give you that high ratio of protein in comparison in the density. So, and another thing that we see, and this, I'm guilty of this, but I think it's like 250, maybe it's 260, 280. I don't know. It's basically a meal, but anytime you get, and I've did some educational presentations on this for you guys as well. I'd have to go dig them up, but the ratio of calories per in a protein bar, you know, if it's 250 calories, that's a meal. I mean, it's starting to push up into a meal range, and it would really have to be 25, 30 grams of protein. Even then, 30 grams, I would say there's one bar that I will go after that if we're on the road and our options are minimal, I will use it as almost like a meal, but it's in that 250 calorie range. But I think it is around 30 grams of protein, so it at least gives me that ratio enough. But that's pretty high on a bar. And then here's some strategies for keeping the budget in mind because I know that's always a top of mind. There's a lot of affordable proteins that you can buy more in a large quantities and utilize uh, those protein sources. So eggs, canned tuna, chicken, you can even go after the frozen chicken breast or ground turkey and do specific recipes that make sense for you. Because if they're in that frozen format, sometimes you want to use them in specific recipes because they may not taste as good being frozen. Uh, Again, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese. Those are simpler, cheaper, budget-friendly sources of a higher protein ratio. So other things you can do, buy bulk, obviously freezer portions out. So if they're running a sale, things you see this a lot, things are getting ready to expire, so they'll put them on sale if you can get a hold of them and then freeze them. And then again, reuse them in a format that makes sense to you. I think prep once, eat multiple times so you're efficient with what you're doing. Rotate proteins with sauces and spices. That's an easy way to keep you from not stagnating. You can have your 4 or 5 different spices you go to. That's what we do hey, we use XYZ on our chicken, and we may rotate that through. And then other sauces. Hey, we have these 3 or 4 different sauces we use that may be lower calorie for with our chicken. That way we can have some variety in how we cook and eat certain proteins. So that way you're trying to minimize the stagnation or the boredom. I know sometimes it does get boring, and sometimes we just have to be bored and do it. So, these are just meal templates. And this is pretty similar to what we do. Eggs, I do both. I do, eggs and either yogurt and or cottage cheese. I don't do oats. I don't typically do fruit, but you can add those in there. Um, and that's probably one area that myself and my personal palate, I probably need to do a better job with consuming fruits. I've kind of burned myself out over the years and probably should get back to it. I did have some blueberries for my lunch, but that's one area I know I need to work on it. That's from a big picture. I stay within my macros and do that. But sometimes even within your macros, you miss some of the nutrient-based components. Lunch, chicken, tuna. Again, I went through this rice and veggies dinner, some type of protein. You can eat fish, beef, whatever it looks like for you. Then a veggie, veggies, or you can pull the carbs out because a veggie is a carb. And I don't know why they always label it that way. And then snacks are going to be shakes or jerky, plus a fruit if you need that carbohydrate source. And then obviously protein and then color portion. You want to get more of if you're going to get the veggies, the green, dark green veggies are going to be more nutrient dense. So the really mindset shift and understanding of all this is you're not eating less, you're just eating better and more dense. And that's truly what it is. And a lot of times we try to get people to pull some of their uh, processed foods out because typically they're not as dense on the nutritional value that you need. Can you still maneuver those? Yes, you can. But it may be a little bit more challenging sometimes because your hunger response may kick up just based upon what it is. You can enjoy the volume and flavor without, breaking your calorie goal. You just have to manipulate and understand those ratios a little bit better. And protein is going to be the foundation of sustainable fat loss. And we don't want to starve the body. We want to be in a deficit, but you need to fuel the body because you do need the energy to do the work as well. So there's always a balance there to not pull your calories too low, not push them too high. We have to stay right in that marker point in some type of deficit to keep that needle moving in the right direction, specifically for that fat loss phase. So you want to like eat more of what serves you and making better decisions because you're going to actually feel better if you can maneuver some of these situations, choose a better quality food, a more dense aspect because again it's going to stabilize the energy response, insulin response, and then it will allow you to tamp down that hunger for an extended period of time, and you get a sensation of being full enough. You don't have to be stuffed. Really, the sensation of being stuffed is that and this is a personal component. I personally don't like that feeling. So I'm not necessarily a big eater. And when I do consume a little bit too much, uh, I just don't feel well. And I don't like that. I know some people have associated that feeling of they should feel that way once they're done eating. And you really shouldn't. You should feel like when you're done eating, you should feel like you could have a couple more bites if you needed it, but most of the time you probably don't need it. You've hit that calorie marker point, and you should be good to go with that. A lot of times, what happens with this is we do stretch out, the stomach by overeating, and then we always feel like we need to do that every time. It's just being more aware of your body and in tune with your responses. Again, build meal around protein, keep calories in check, and enjoy the higher volume sensation of being full with using higher quality, high dense foods that are higher in nutrition's value. And you want to look at the fiber content because that'll help you quite a bit as well. And a discipline isn't restriction, it's alignment with your goals. Again, you probably hear me say that quite often, but it's more about who you become in the process of making the better decisions for the outcome you desire, because that's going to carry you long term, because you may move away from the old strategies you used to have, the old habits you used to have, because that used to be you, because you're becoming that new version of you. So that's all we have for today. Let me go ahead and stop the share. Um, but this is one, one topic that a lot of times people need to be a little bit more aware of with, hey, what's the quality of it, of the food I'm consuming? What does it look like? Is it more nutrient dense? Is it more in its natural state? Is it higher in fiber? Is it going to give me the sensation of being fuller for a longer period of time? Those, if you can start dialing those small changes in, they will compound, they will add up, and you will notice the difference as long as you're staying within that calorie range. Because that's the other thing, like I said, I've coached uh, clients in the past where it's fine, their food looked great, it was just their consumption was too high. Making sure we stay under that marker point enough to get us in some type of caloric restriction, and then we compound some of the workouts and our metabolic process on top of it. Ideally, what we want to do is get ourselves in utilizing fat as a fuel source, fat oxidation, and doing the ratios of the proteins up higher and the carbs lower. That's what we're trying to do, along with making sure your metabolic is stoked, your metabolic process is stoked, using carbohydrates for fuel and recovery. So that way you can still do your workouts, you can still perform without the lag. But again, the number one thing we can do with carbohydrates is manipulate them up and down or reduce them to help us get in a caloric deficit while maintaining our lean tissue and recovery. So that's just a broad statement of what that would look like for us to get you in fat oxidation and utilizing fat as a fuel source and doing that day in and day out. So is there any questions? I know one other thing that I will say is with the next week, I just got an email from our daughter's school, and we got it's she's doing a presentation next Tuesday, which is Veterans Day. So we will move our call, which I'll let you guys know. We're going to move our call later in the day, so it'll be more in the afternoon because we will run over to the school and do watch her do presentation on Veterans Day, which will be fun. We did that with our son last year, so we just got a notification this morning, and I knew it was coming up, but I just couldn't remember the time. So I'll let you guys know. We'll move this call back probably 3:30, somewhere in there, 3:30, that time frame. But I'll let you guys know because we just have to have enough time to get back from the school. So yeah, Stephanie, if you don't have any other questions, I'll wrap it up. But if you do, just never hesitate.
All good. This was great. Thank you.
All good.
Yeah.
Sorry, sorry, I should turn my microphone up a little bit. Yeah, no worries. Hopefully this is helpful. If you do have other specific questions, never hesitate to reach out. We have a ton of resources. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, you have a great day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.